What is up, down, and sideways, you beautiful people? It is League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you guys. A little special epi. We're going through the time machine way back to 2019, which, by the way, the last time we had full fans in a venue for an international event. The 2019 World Championship, we are revisiting it, and this is in Europe. The theme song, we always got to start, it was Fly, Phoenix, Fly, which of course was just, telling the future of who was going to win the whole event.
It was the spoiler alert for the event. Was the theme song. You know what? An okay theme song.
We had to wait really long for this one, so people had high expectations.
Yeah, and I don't think they quite met it as far as, the delay and the high bar that has been set by World's theme songs. But you know what? Not my least favorite. We'll at least give Phoenix the credit for that one. And you know what? The World Championship was actually better than the World Song this 2019. You say when you say way back, I'm like, okay, well, how far back are we going? And you go to 2019. But then you start realizing, you start looking at some of the teams, some of the logos, the orgs that we've got, the rosters.
Teams don't even exist anymore.
And you go, man, does time really move like this? This feels like ages ago. And it's not that long.
So everyone thinks of 2020 as, play-ins. This is when play-ins leveled up, when the format changed. Remember play-ins in 2019, guys, because they were fun. They were competitive. You had Clutch Gaming. This was 3 groups instead of 2. Clutch went 2-2. They needed a tiebreaker to get out to the next round. They ended up 3-0ing Royal Bandits. But people were legit concerned for NA in play-ins.
This is before Clutch would become Dignitas, and oh boy, this was an interesting way that they played in the play-ins. You were looking at this Clutch Gaming roster, specifically looking at Huni and Demonte and what they could do as a duo and how they would play around those solo lane players. But it was also one of the things that you knew that they were also very sloppy at times. There was a lot of chances for teams that could capitalize on mistakes to put Clutch Gaming down. And we saw that even in the play-in stage with the Unicorns of Love and Mammoth.
And then Unicorns lose that tiebreaker. They end up going 5 games against Splice. This is 3/5 of the Unicorns of Love team that we got very familiar with on the international stage. Just missing out on that main stage. Splice would survive and have a great tournament, actually, as we'll dive into. Damwon was a play-in team. They were absolutely styling on everybody, as you would expect. To have a play-in team that you think can make a legitimate deep run at Worlds was absolutely terrifying. But there were great games. They were competitive in the play-in stage. It was just a prelude to what would be a fantastic main event. And as we go through the groups alphabetically, because that's the way to do it, we start in Group A. This is G2 and Griffin, Mark. And this was so quickly a 2-horse race in this group. Cloud9 had absolutely no chance.
And you know what? I think even the most diehard of NA fans, even ourselves, which can be fooled and believed in the region at times when we shouldn't, I think everybody knew that, you know what? You can try to punch your best, throw your hardest fight here. It's not going to work against these Titans in G2 and Griffin and what you had in this Group A. And we saw that all the way throughout this group stage for these two, the way that they would bounce back and fight each other. It was very clear that these were going to be the 2 cut from Group A.
And remember, G2 started 5-0 and were looking unstoppable. Everybody was kind of memeing on Griffin, saying they were overrated. And then they hand G2 that first loss and then slap them around in the tiebreaker in back-to-back games. And quickly everybody shut up about Griffin.
Everybody shut up about Griffin. Yes, still there were a lot of people talking about Sword and Doran and what was going on and everything with Griffin as well. But yes, the answers on the Rift, at the very least in that second half of the group stage, very much answered by a lot of people and shut up a lot of critics.
Griffin takes that first seed. G2 gets out as the second seed. We go over to Group B, which I think a lot of people forget about this group. This is the FPX, Splice, J-Team, Gigabyte Marines. GAM has less of an impact in groups than we remember of seeing. Again, the last time VCS has been at an international event, which is absolutely mind-blowing that it's been that long. But FPX struggled in this group. They finished 4-2. They needed a tiebreaker against Splice, and this is the worst they looked at the entire tournament.
And this is coming on the backs of a lot of people having questions about FPX heading towards this event, not buying in to the hype around someone like Doing B as being one of the premier players at this event. People, somewhat rightfully so, examining and hyper focusing on his laning stats and of that nature, and throwing out everything that he would do the rest of the map and for the rest of the team, which of course, as we know, is the Doing B special and is where that value is created.
And the most important part of the group stage for FPX here was Doing B gets his one Malphite game in so that he can pick the World Championship skin for it.
Yeah, he's got to make sure this is the year that he picked up the wife buff, finally locking it in. Got to make sure he's locking in the Malphite for his wife to get her the awesome world skin that we'll get to talk about later. But yes, this group stage was certainly very rough for FPX and not the way that they wanted to. And especially that first week for them in this group stage was extremely dire.
Dropping a game to J Team, they dropped the game to Splice. They looked iffy against the Marines, but as we did learn, Splice just had a fantastic run in the group stage and the quarterfinals when we will get to that matchup for them. And then we go to Group C, which was the group of death in this one. Absolutely. Clutch Gaming, and they wanted this group. Hootie wanted some revenge against SKT, but SKT, RNG, Fnatic, Clutch gets thrown in. Definitely the hardest group of the group stage.
You know what? Bless his heart, but I don't know exactly how much revenge Hootie was expecting he would be able to get with the Clutch Gaming squad going up against the Titans and SKT. Yes, this was still SKT before it was T1. A nice little flashback for that as well. But when you go through this group, yes, group of death plus Clutch Gaming is the way I like to look at it with these three teams of RNG, SKT, and Fnatic. And it was Fnatic finding their way through the one that a lot of people would have had as that third seed. They find their way out in those top two spots.
Yeah, so maybe people thought Clutch might pick up an upset win. They end up going 0-6, but it's probably the most forgivable 0-6 that an NA team has ever had at the World Championship. SKT finishes 5-1. They have that incredible backdoor game against RNG early in the tournament, which has some great shot calling, great macro play out of SKT. But you're absolutely right. The story of this group was Fnatic. This is not 2018 Fnatic where everyone was riding high on them. This is 2019 where they couldn't get past G2, but everyone thought, you know what, they're still a really good team. G2 is just absolutely world class, and they proved that at this World Championship and in the group stage. They got a win against SKT, eventually denying RNG top 8 for the first time in the organization's history that they've been at Worlds, and Nemesis was the guy who stepped up the most in the group stage.
When everybody doubted him, that's when Nemesis decides to step up and be the big boy in the mid lane that Fnatic needed. And you said it, with those big wins against T1, SKT, against RNG, when it mattered most for Fnatic. That was the big one, the clutch performances that they got through to get out of this group. And as you said, a lot of people looked at this Fnatic team, the team that had come up short against G2 in the finals, and looked at this group and said, you know what? It stinks, because we would like to see Fnatic get to that next stage, to push themselves, to try and see how much they can grow at an event sharpened by the toughest competition. But this just might be too tough of a group. They answered full on and made sure that they were one of the two getting out.
The bot lane was great for them. Obviously, you had Vigar picks coming up for Nemesis, getting solo kills on Faker as he's trying to dive them. 4-2, didn't even need a tiebreaker against RNG. And obviously, that's the demons of Reckless, always losing to Uzi at these big marquee international events. So obviously, he was emotional in that win. Exciting for Fnatic to get out of that group stage. The final group to talk about is Group D. And if you remember, when we were doing the draws and everything, because the way the format works, you do the first 3 teams, then you have to wait for play-ins. And when they initially did the group draw, Mark, Team Liquid in there with IG and AHQ, everyone was like, oh, that's it. They already beat IG at MSI. This is a 4-time LCS championship squad. That's an easy way to get groups. But everyone was saying, they're guaranteed Damwon, guys. They have to get Damwon in this group. This group is not as easy as it looks, and as it turns out, it wasn't.
And it's very important to remember the Damwon of this time, because yes, everybody, was respectful, excited, hyped around Damwon. We knew about Showmaker, Canyon, what we were getting from this squad. But at the same time, I think a lot of people didn't quite understand what type of elite power Damwon could
They were
be.
unproven. They hadn't won anything yet.
Of course, and that was it. They made their way through the play-ins almost completely unchallenged in the way that they could play. And then they get to this group stage. And yes, as we entered it, we talk about Team Liquid, a fourth-time of Captain Flowers back to back to back to back champion in North America. They take down IG at MSI. We're feeling great. Yes, we of course all know how that MSI ended as well, but we don't need to talk about that either. We know
records were set. Yeah.
This should have been the pinnacle for this Team Liquid roster, this organization at this point in time. Everything they had accomplished in this run in North America. This was the worlds where you would put it on display and get out of group stage.
And they even start with a win against Damwon in their first day of action. So even more so, everyone's like, oh, baby, here we go.
And then the ceiling comes crashing down.
As is NA tradition, it's always the second week where you're playing 3 games in one day. They had the matchup against Damwon, the rematch that they lose, and then they have the match against IG. Even though they lose to Damwon, they have a chance to clinch with that win. And then it ends up being a showdown against IG, head-to-head. Whoever wins gets that final spot. That game doesn't end up being close.
And I think anybody would say that as soon as you saw the performance, maybe past 15, I'll give you another 5 minutes, 20 minutes of that the first game on the week 2 for Team Liquid. You knew it was over. You knew it was NA week 2, and that this team didn't have the performance necessary to make their own luck, choose their own destiny with their own performance. It was going to be about whether Damwon or IG were up to the task on the day to make themselves go through to the next round. And you know what? Like these elite teams do, they were good enough.
And you know what? To be honest, when you saw IG and Damwon face off in that second week, as most NA fans, I think were like, yeah, okay, those two teams should probably get out over Team Liquid.
Yeah, it was very clear in this group, and that's what's really, I think, unfortunate when you do examine this old Team Liquid, because there has to be some accountability and some criticism to the individual performances. Sure, that's absolutely part of this failure, but it is looking at just the general, bad luck of the draw, whatever you want to do in that situation of your opponents. You had IG, and IG stepped up to the plate. Okay, that's one. But you know what? Getting the Damwon to step into the way that they did and to shake up the group as strongly as they could, that is something I don't think anyone could have predicted.
The team that's probably the most upset with IG getting out over Team Liquid in that second seed is probably Griffin, because they drew them in quarterfinals. Of course, all of these quarterfinals ended up going 3-1, and they were all there were close moments and very interesting in their own right. The Griffin IG one was, of course, the Shy Sword gap. Top lane was a gaping hole for Griffin throughout this whole series. You felt so bad because the other 4 were trying their absolute hardest to carry them over the finish line.
And if you've only started watching League in the last year and a half before talking, about this World Championship, please go back and watch a couple of those highlights of the absolute dominance and mastery that the Shy was showing over Sword. And yes, it's not always exciting and interesting to watch how, someone completely dumpster and dominate their opponent. But watching the way that the Shy did it, and especially the way that the Shy's career has gone since that point, I think it's important to stress going back and looking at those highlights for some people to get a better overall picture of what it is when we talk about the Shy, because he is such an interesting and enigmatic character to talk about in the LPO.
3 LCK teams, 3 LEC teams, all through into the top 8. Then you have the G2 versus Damwon series, and this is where the rivalry starts. This is when G2 3-1s Damwon. Damwon takes the lessons that they need to become absolute world enders and world champions from this. But it was G2 getting the best of them in this series, and the strategy was send literally everyone on the team top to kill Nuguri. And it worked.
Yeah, this is back with Nuguri on Damwon, and absolutely it worked for G2. They had Wonder playing at his very best, and everyone else coming upside to put some extra resources there, it worked out fantastic for G2. As you said, this is the birth of the little rivalry, that we've got between these two, and the trash talk that we get between them. This is where it all started. G2 absolutely with their gameplay and then their attitude on and off the rift set it up, and you definitely can believe that Showmaker, yes, stepping away disappointed on the day, he took a mental note of how things went with G2 and said, I'm going to have my revenge.
He was added to the list, and spoilers, damn one, would get the revenge against the boys from EU. The other two EU squads, Splice against SKT, Fnatic versus FPX, two overall tournament favorites, and I think both put up very admirable showings. Splice, I know people kind of memed on SKT's draft in this series, as they always do in games that they lose or are close, but both Splice and Fnatic put up very competitive series, and EU fans should have been proud.
Yeah, the role that they did, stepping into this part of the event, knowing that, all right, we got the 3 EU teams. We've all made it out in EU.
It's already a win. That's already a win.
It's fantastic. And as you said before, we had the crowds. You had everybody there. It was so great. And then we get to this part of the event, and you do need to talk about the teams exiting. And really, for me, when I look back at this point, I think of Splice, and I think of someone specifically in Xerxes, and the job that he did for them in the jungle throughout, obviously, his entire time there. But then, in this World Championship, this World Series, really was the carry of the horse for them, for Splice specifically, and the job that he did against SKT. That's the one that I'm looking at, and the player that kept them in this series more than they should have been.
It was the end of Splice as an organization, as they would rebrand to Mad Lions after this. Incredible learning opportunity for Humanoid, and this series alone, I think, played a big role in him becoming arguably the best mid laner in Europe, a few short years later after this. And for Fnatic, it was the end of the Broxa and Nemesis era. That's when you had Selfmade coming in for them and things changing for them. Nemesis had one more year there. What am I talking about? But it was still another fantastic run for both Fnatic and Splice, even though they didn't get away with the quarterfinal win. Then we move into semifinals, where the theme continued of 3-1 series, and both of these series, you had SKT versus G2 and FPX versus IG. Even though they didn't go to game 5s, these were some of the most competitive 4-game series you'll ever see.
If the quarterfinals didn't necessarily deliver all the way through, yes, there were some stories to talk about, little things here and there, but they didn't quite deliver the absolute banger that you want towards the end of the World Championship. These semifinals did. These were the ones where you absolutely knew, you know what? We are down to the best 4 squads. We've got it limited down. This is going to be where it gets good. This is where the fun begins. And yeah, these series were a heck of a time. And it was the unbelievable luck of making sure it was G2 getting by T1.
Yeah, it was obviously the game 4 is what everybody remembers. The 1-6 Yasuo power spike out of Perks, the call from Dracos, the best team the EU has ever had against the best team League of Legends has ever seen. Fantastic series. SKT absolutely could have won that game 4, forced the game 5. And then on the other side, FPX versus IG, it was another full display of the shy, because even within individual games, you could have these incredible highlights from him, and then just forgetting to Kale Altar, flashing in and dying, which you live and die by the shy mark.
That is the story of Invictus Gaming, and this was the other one to remember, that this was the story heading into this event, even in EU, was about the Chinese teams talking about FPX, IG, how it was going to work out. And the way it did was that they're going to be on the same side. You're not going to get them on the opposite sides of the bracket. They were going to have to fight and decided. And it was FPX that got the best of their LPL brethren. And when you mention the Shy and you think of what he did, I'm thinking about in the top side, you're looking at Gimgoon and what he was doing for FPX at the time. And
he held his own.
He certainly held his own. And when I think of Gimgoon, I'm thinking of that nasty gangplank that he is able to play.
There's a reason the man's got a skin that goes the way of the gangplank. By the way, if you want to watch an absolute bloodthirsty series, there was 168 kills across the 4 games between FPX and IG. That is an average of 42 kills a game. If that doesn't scream LPL, I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
It sometimes feels that when we hype up these LPL, bloodthirsty matches, these fiestas that come through, it always disappoints at the international stage. But no, this was like
Not that
tuning
one.
in on a Thursday night for some LPL action, my man. It was as LPL as it gets.
And then, as is tradition, we get to the finals. And the grand finals are the worst best of 5 of the entire knockout round, which was kind of the same as what we saw in 2018. But one thing I want to touch on, I think people forget that people were saying FPX, they had the easy path to get to the final. They didn't have to play an LCK team. They didn't have to play the team from Korea. But really what this tournament did, after IG won in 2018, then FPX 3-0s again, it was like, well, it shouldn't be you didn't have to play an LCK team. It should be, did you dodge an LPL team? Because this was the year where you're like, okay, fully cemented, LPL's the best region in the world.
And I think a lot of people had already started to come to that conclusion. I think in the scene, as far as what we had seen from the LPL teams, and especially the LPL teams at that ultra high level, at the very tippity top of any type of power rankings. That's where you saw a difference in these LPL teams where, yes, you had the memes of the past, and as much as we talked FPX IG, the bloodthirsty, the fiestas that can happen, but you do talk about these top teams and the elite levels that they can reach and the pinnacle that they can play at. That's what it was this year, fully realized with IG and FPX, the power that they showed. And then especially in this finals, just the dominance that FPX had over G2 clearly showcased it.
LWX doesn't die a single time in the finals. He was at peak performance of these finals. Tien plays 3 straight games of Lee Sin, and you could put together a pretty sick highlight montage of just those 3 games from him.
You could get the highlight montage. You could take the montage from the next year's World Song where you got Tien in there.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You take your pick, my man. This was a masterclass from obviously a lot of members of this FPX team, but specifically the one for me on the day was Tien. The job that he did, completely neutralizing any effect that Jankos could have for G2, and then the role that he did, Tien, with the rest of the team, and the execution mechanically, it was all there from Tien. Beautiful on that championship winning day.
And the last thing from this finals is, because people were hesitant and didn't fully believe in FPX, they were probably still the underdogs coming into this finals. This was the year of G2. They won MSI. They won both LEC splits. This was the golden slam for them. They were absolutely the favorites after taking down Damwon and SKT. And then for FPX to just completely turn things around and slam them was a surprise.
It was an absolute shocker for a lot of people. Carlos, we heard it at the end of the event and how things were. And I think that's one thing I do want to mention, actually. I do want to give credit and praise to the crowd, to the audience that was there, as we did talk that this was the last time we had fans in attendance. The ones that, yes, it was a lower number than we had been having at these outside venues, at the Bird's Nest, etc. But it was a very loud, about 20,000 people.
And they cheered for FPX too, despite being in EU.
Yeah, they absolutely made sure most of the cheers were for
Yep.
their G2 fans, and rightfully so. But yes, they were very, very good to FPX, and when FPX won, everybody was very happy.
2019, the year of the Phoenix, one of the best world championships that we've had in recent memory. But that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you guys. Thanks for hanging. Catch you on that flippity flip.